Hello, BookTube. How are you? It's Justin here at This Just In. What's going on? It's a new year. I'm bringing to you a new tag video. Now, this is a tag that was created by my dear close friend, Michael K Vaughan. This is the Astounding science fiction tag. A very suitable tag for Mike to create, of course. So, figured my dear friend makes a tag. I should probably tackle at least one of the tags he makes, right? Has he made another tag? I'll have to look. I wouldn't be surprised if he did and I missed it. All right, anyway, I'm doing this one. Yay me. All right, the Astounding Science Fiction tag. We've got 8 questions, 8 in-depth, very probing questions here for any science fiction fan. So let's start. Number one, what was the first science fiction book that you read? What did you think of it? He's getting away with 2 questions in one here. That's okay. He's a good friend of mine. So the first science fiction book that I can recall reading is probably the novelization of the first Star Wars movie. I was probably about 6 or 7 years old when that book came out. I was about 6 or 7 years old when the first movie came out. I saw it in the theater. It was a life-changing event, not having seen anything like it up to that point. Of course, there are many, many things that are like it now. But a young child being exposed to this in that era, at that age, it's really hard to it's hard to compare to anything else. I don't know. It had quite an impact on me, on my little mind. The amazing effects, and I became fascinated with it as almost every other child did my age. So I, of course, got my hands on the novelization, and I read that, and it was a lot of fun. It allowed me to re-experience the movie in a time where you could not go back and watch a movie anytime you wanted. Once it was out of the theater, it was gone for quite a while until it came around on TV, and then it would be cut up and filled with commercials. So the book, the novelization of the Star Wars film, allowed me to re-experience the movie in my mind at my leisure. And it had some differences that I found very captivating. We got to meet Jabba the Hutt in that book, although he's a little bit different in that book than what he ended up being in Return of the Jedi. The book was credited to George Lucas, but it was actually ghostwritten by Alan Dean Foster. Yeah, that movie meant a lot to me at the time, meant a lot to me for many years. It's probably best I stop talking about Star Wars there. But other early science fiction books that I remember reading, I think when I might have been 11, 12 at that age, when my aunt gave me a box of books. And among those books was Kurt Vonnegut's Cat's Cradle. And I read that. I must have been 11 or 12 when I read that. Might have been a little bit early to really read it and grasp what it was about. Cat's Cradle is about this substance called Ice-9, which I believe turns to ice at room temperature, and any liquid that it touches also turns to ice. So a pretty dangerous substance to have around, potentially catastrophic. And one of the things I just distinctly remember about that book is there's a religion called Bakunanism, and they have this practice called Boko Maru, in which 2 participants will sit down and face each other and put their bare feet together, soul to soul, as it were. And it's something of an erotic experience, and it was very confusing to my 11, 12-year-old mind at the time. It was I haven't read that book in a while. Might be due for a reread. Of course, I'd have to get another copy of it. That's not going to happen for a little while, though. The other early science fiction book I can remember reading is The Martian Chronicles by Ray Bradbury, which I enjoyed quite a bit. I think when I first read it, I was surprised that it was more or less a collection of short stories. And the other thing I remember about that is one of my teachers in middle school noticing the book and making a point to tell me how he didn't really care for it. But yeah, whatever. All right, on to question number 2. What was the last science fiction book that you read? What did you think of it? Oh, 2 questions in one, once more. So the last science fiction book I read, now this is apparently considered one of the first, if not the first, science fiction books. it might be more horror for some. I don't know. I always thought it was a horror book, and then I guess it's science fiction. Frankenstein, Mary Shelley's Frankenstein. This is probably the last science fiction book I read. You'll know what I think of it if you watched my video where I reviewed this book. I loved it quite a bit. Some fascinating themes that it touched upon, and some relevant themes to me that had to do with parenthood. So yes, Mary Shelley's Frankenstein. What did I think of it? I thought it was fantastic. I wished I had read it sooner, although I was really glad that I read it now. So on to the next question. If you love science fiction, what made you love science fiction? Oh boy. So that's I thought about that one for a little bit. There's a lot to love about science fiction. And I think one of the things that I like about it most is it's this avenue for escape, this way to experience worlds that you can't otherwise experience. You get to go to different places, different worlds, different universes, different completely made up environments, made up stuff, I guess. Again, getting lost in another world, a world where anything could happen, has always been a big draw to me for reading, for film, or for video games even. It's a big part of why I like to play video games, is I like the experience of experiencing a place that I've never been, or getting the feel of being able to do things that you can't do. That's one of the reasons why I'm so hopeful and really wish that virtual reality had come a little bit farther than it has. I fear that I will age out before virtual reality gets to really might get to where I would love to see it, but it may never be something like, Ready Player One or Snow Crash or any other number of virtual reality science fiction books. But anyway, so experiencing new worlds is a big part of why I love science fiction. So that was number 3. That brings us to question number 4. What is your favorite science fiction movie? Well, it's not Star Wars. You might think it is, but it's not. As much as I loved that movie as a child, as I grew older, there's another movie that I liked even more than Star Wars. I remember reading an article about this movie before it was even released, and hearing about the struggle of the director to get the movie released in the way he wanted it, in the cut and the version that he wanted, and his fight against the studio to get that to happen for him. And I felt for him. Yeah, I felt the injustice of it, and it was frustrating. And it made the film feel personal to me even before I had seen the movie. And when I finally saw the movie, it was everything I had hoped that it would be. And that movie is Terry Gilliam's Brazil. This is, of course, a book, not a movie, but this is a book about the movie, Brazil. This is a book about that struggle that he had, the battle that he had to get Brazil released in the form that he desired, so that it told the story and the message that Terry Gilliam wanted to tell. Terry Gilliam, of course, is one of the members of Monty Python, the only American member, and he has this visual style, this quirkiness, absurd style. Time Bandits was also one of my favorite movies when I was young, and Brazil also has it's even darker than Time Bandits, which is actually a strange, dark little kids movie. But anyway, Brazil is dark. It's funny. It has some interesting takes on themes of bureaucracy and capitalism, and is set in this kind of Orwellian future. If you haven't seen Brazil, I highly recommend it. It's been a long time since I've watched it. Maybe it feels dated at this point, but I think it's still a worthwhile watch. Brazil, my favorite science fiction movie, maybe one of my favorite movies, period. But that takes us to number 5. What is your favorite science fiction TV show? I'm gonna have to say Twilight Zone. I know Mike didn't really fit that into as a science fiction show, but I think it is. I think it fits science fiction, has enough science fiction in it. I will call it science fiction because I want that to be my answer for favorite science fiction show. because really I don't know that I would have any other answer. I like Star Trek just fine. The original series, of course, is fantastic. I didn't have the same draw to it or same connection to it that Mike might have, or a lot of people might have had. There wasn't a lot at home. There wasn't a lot of science fiction being watched on TV. I think it just was something that wasn't on unless I put it on, and sometimes it got turned off. But I tried to watch it where I could. Star Trek wasn't something I got to watch very often, so it really didn't hit me the same way as it could have. Although I still appreciate it, and I still think it's a pretty great show. Juan also spoke of The X-Files. The X-Files is also a fantastic science fiction show. So that would come in at number 2, I think, for me. So Twilight Zone is just one of the greatest TV shows, period. Okay, enough about TV. And let's move on to, let's see, that was question 5. My formatting here is very strange. So, okay, question 6. What science fiction book do you feel should be read more often? Now, this is where I start to feel a little less qualified. I don't have this depth of knowledge or broad history of reading science fiction that Mike might have, or many others of you watching might have. But I've read some science fiction, though it's been a long time. One of my favorite aspects, or one of my favorite science fiction type stories, is time travel. I believe I've mentioned before. One of my favorite science fiction, or my favorite time travel novels, is The Man Who Folded Himself by David Gerrold. This is a fantastic, very unique, very strange, very it drew me in. It's the story of this man who is visited by his uncle, who gives him the gift of a belt, and this belt happens to be a time machine and allows our main character to travel through time. And I don't want to say anything more about it, except I will say that the title of the book is very apt in a very strange way. The whole thing is very strange. It's one of the most unique reading experiences that I've had. Again, based on my own personal reading history. The Man Who Folded Himself, David Gerrold. 2 thumbs up. Science fiction, time travel, thumbs up. Okay. Anyway, let's move on. What is your favorite science fiction short story? Does The Lottery count? I mean, maybe that's more of a dark fantasy, or I don't know. The Lottery is probably my favorite short story, period. So I want to answer that, but I won't, because I don't know that it quite qualifies as a science fiction story. Mike, of course, talked about H.P. Lovecraft, and it was Mike who introduced me, well, didn't introduce me to, but reacquainted me with H.P. Lovecraft. So I have Mike to thank for. I read all of H.P. Lovecraft during a period of time, and it was great to do that. Great to talk to Mike about it. It has brought me one of my favorite science fiction short story. I'm not sure it's a short story. I'm going to say it's a short story because I love it so much, and I want to say it's my favorite something, and that is At the Mountains of Madness by H.P. Lovecraft. It is in this. There are 3 Penguin volumes of Lovecraft that Penguin has published with Lovecraft stories. This is A Thing on the Doorstep and Other Weird Stories, as you can see here. If you are able to read, you will see that is what I'm holding. But you cannot see from looking at the cover that At the Mountains of Madness is in here, but it is. At least I hope it is. Oh, it is. It is the second to the last story in this fantastic book. So, At the Mountains of Madness, I spoke of my fascination with other worlds and escaping and experiencing new, unique worlds. At the Mountains of Madness brings me that whole, what's the word I'm looking for? It really captures that for me. It's an expedition to the Antarctic, and of course, the Antarctic itself is such a unique environment, with unique landscapes and vistas, and that would be a very fascinating place to visit, as dangerous as it is. But if it were Lovecraft, if Lovecraft's vision of the Antarctic were true, it would be even more dangerous, because there is an entire city there that has been built by some alien visitors who had their own city there where they hung out and did whatever aliens do. And of course, there may or may not be some still hanging around. But anyway, fantastic story. Again, it captures that other world, that desire for me, or fulfills that desire that I have to visit other worlds through my reading and literature. So, At the Mountains of Madness. All right. So, I guess after answering the question of my favorite short story, I have to answer, what is my favorite science fiction book? I don't know. It's been a long time since I've read the science fiction books that I loved so much when I was younger, when I'd thrown myself into science fiction. So I don't know that I'm even qualified to give an answer. Well, I'm not saying what the best one is, I'm saying what my favorite one is. But how can I choose my favorite when there's so many other great science fiction novels that I have yet to read? So I can talk about some of the books that I read years ago that I love so much. Snow Crash by Neil Stephenson, a virtual reality science fiction story. I also love science fiction stories when they involve computers, since computers, that's what I do for a living. So it's always I always find it a lot of fun when computers are involved. Neil Stephenson's Snow Crash. We have our hero, whose name is Hero Protagonist, very clever, and he is a hacker and a pizza delivery guy. And I know that sounds kind of kooky. It sounds like it might be the silly book, but it's not really silly. It's really, and again, it's been years. It is more serious than that might make it sound, but it of course takes place or it portrays this virtual reality world, the metaverse. So that was where the word metaverse was coined, it would seem. Anyway, it's a great book, one that I really want to revisit. Other books that I love, let's see, The Anubis Gates. We're talking about time travel books. This is probably my favorite time travel novel. It feels more like fantasy as opposed to science fiction, but I guess automatically, is any time travel book become a science fiction book? I don't know. Anyway, it is a fantastic story. One of the things I love about science fiction is this ability for the story, for timelines to wrap around itself, and for things that happen early on that seem odd and out of place, they make sense later on. That kind of almost like a puzzle kind of aspect to time travel novels that really draws me in, if that makes sense. But I may have to give it over to Douglas Adams' Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. That is absurd and imaginative and fascinating, and it goes on for a long time, and I love every page of it. It's something else. It's been a while since I've read that. I would really love to revisit it. Should probably do that soon. Again, I don't think I have a copy of it. Otherwise, I'd be holding it up for you. I don't know where my copy of it went, but that is something that I should revisit. I loved it. The Adventures of Arthur Dent and Zaphod Beeblebrox will always remain etched in my mind. The Restaurant at the End of the Universe, if we're going to talk about time travel, we've got that. We've got the, am I going to get this right? The machine where it shows you how relevant you are to the rest of the universe, and it drives people crazy when they go into it because they see really how little they matter when it comes to themselves in comparison to the rest of the universe. Anyway, Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. I think that just because I have to pick something, I guess that's my favorite. Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. Douglas Adams, we miss you. Well, there we have it. I managed to get a tag video done. I'm not going to tag anybody because I didn't prepare for that. I'm seeing plenty of people do it. I know everybody watches my good friend Mike, and I really appreciate that. So anybody that wants to do it is going to do it. So have at it. Good luck. I look forward to watching more of these astounding science fiction tag videos. So thank you once again for attending one of my tag videos. I hope to produce more soon. I know I was tagged on quite a few things. I might have to do some catch up on that, and you'll see. We'll see how that goes. We'll see how that goes. I might have an idea for that. But anyway, thanks so much. This is Justin here at This Just In, signing off. Thank you. Bye, Earthlings.